Welcome to the channel, everybody. My name is MrHurriicane, and we're playing some Madden 19 today, getting into franchise mode for the first time here on the new Madden. If you're not familiar with me and my channels, I am mainly a franchise YouTuber. I've always been a big franchise fan since I got into sports gaming. And every year the game drops, I want to go and see what a year in franchise looks like. So in this video, we're going to go through an entire season here and sim through to see all the things that you can do. A lot of this is familiar to older Maddens. There's a lot of carryover. There are some new features we're also going to explore. But if you're not so familiar with the way franchise mode works, this will probably be a good video to help you get familiar with the features. The main new thing this year in franchise is player archetypes that go hand in hand with coach schemes. And you'll see on my depth chart here, there are players who have these puzzle pieces as icons, and that means that they are a scheme fit. Also on this depth chart menu, you see that we have new specialist positions, which we talked about a lot during the news cycle, that you can now put in certain players to be your slot cornerback, your slot receiver. These are all important roles in the game of football, and now it's nice that we have ways to automatically put players in those positions. Most of these things are very similar to a year ago. A lot of these things haven't been changed very much. We still have the league news that pops up in the same way as Madden 18, showing off different stories around the league. They also have now your coach shown here in the background, as you also see your things to do menu. Here we have the big decisions, the training, and the games you play, with some other notifications that pop up when they are relevant. Of course, here in the preseason, you got to get down to a 53-man roster so you can release players and sign 10 players to your practice squad, which is, of course, just kind of an additional roster of players that develop but do not play. Now, when you click on a player, this is the new interface that pops up, and it takes a few extra seconds to load in fully because it shows the player in the locker room. That's pretty cool. We have Rock Thomas here, an undrafted running back for the Minnesota Vikings. We see his traits, his ratings. We also see the experience bar below that 64 overall. You can also check on goal progress, and sadly there are still just the same goals for the same positions, so it's not accounting for Rock Thomas being a backup caliber player and Dalvin Cook being a very good starting caliber player. One new feature that was added this year is the ability to select who you want your captains to be, and you'll see Kyle Rudolph here with the captain's patch until I take it away from him. And that actually resets his stars, because the more years you are captain, the more stars end up being gold on your captain's patch. He had 3 before I took it away, and then I gave it back to him, and he had only 1. We see Brian Robinson here. He has the 3 stars on his patch. Just a small aesthetic feature that's a nice touch. Then when you get to the regular season, of course, you have to set your season goal, the big decision that was introduced a couple years ago that gives you an XP reward if you are able to reach your goal. I don't think there are any new kinds of big decisions to make this year. You'll get notified when things happen, whether it's players getting injured or signed from the practice squad. The main thing I wanted to show here is how the scheme system works. So we see that we have a really high scheme fit percentage because our players do reach a certain threshold that makes them fit the West Coast power run offense. We could change that scheme if we wanted to and see how our roster would fit that. But when you look at the depth chart, you only see certain players with that puzzle piece icon, and that's because that's what their focus is as a player. That's their best archetype. So I feel like this system still needs some work because there are so many players that fit the scheme, but they just happen to be better at something else. Kirk Cousins, for instance, has 81 West Coast but 82 field generals, so he doesn't get the boost. Adam Thielen, no puzzle piece icon next to him despite being an 88 red zone threat and an 88 possession receiver. It still picked red zone threat as his type of receiver. The reason this stuff matters is because it affects how fast your players are going to progress. And the other thing you can do to affect that is control these XP sliders if you want players at certain spots to get more XP or less. And I'm not sure yet how default handles this new system quite yet because the way you upgrade players is definitely different. Also, I didn't know that as a coach you could demand release. I never play as a coach, so I was amused by that. As a coach, you do earn your own XP and you have different goals and rewards you can get for yourself, like expert scouting for more scouting points every week, or you can make it easier to sign players of certain positions or upgrade players faster at certain positions. So that's all the same as we've seen in the past. This is definitely very similar, along with this training menu where you can choose 3 players that you want to kind of get an extra focus on, and they'll gain a little more experience than everybody else as a focus player. You also have your chance to game plan for your opponents. This will give you tips as to how your opponent is typically going to call their offense or defense, and you can practice against what they're supposed to be good at, and then that helps you further upgrade your players. So we'll go through it. You can sim the drills, or you can actually play through them, and the better you do, you'll end up getting more XP for your players. So in this case, we were practicing playing against the cover 3, and it just teaches you about how these different coverages work and how you're supposed to attack them. So if you're not as familiar with coverages or different concepts, definitely take the time to learn them. Even go into the skills trainer and spend some time in there, because when you know what you're doing and you know how to beat certain coverages before the play even begins, you're going to have a lot more fun in the game, whether it's offline or online. Also, you play a drill on both offense and defense, and in this case I decided to go player lock because I've just been trying to get more familiar with that in case I play some defense in career mode this year over on my second channel. But overall, these are kind of helpful if you just want to get an idea of how to beat certain coverages that you're probably going to see a lot during the game. And once you're done, here are the XP boosts being awarded, and if you fit the scheme and have that puzzle piece, you're going to get a bonus. And that's where the players who don't have the puzzle piece but still fit the scheme, theoretically, they're not getting that boost like I think that they should be. So much of this team doesn't have that puzzle piece icon, yet they make the scheme fit percentage very high. Now when you earn a skill point, you see that experience bar below the 84 overall here for Daniil Hunter, you get a skill point and you put it into a specific archetype, and that archetype will increase ratings that fit that style. So as a run stopper, we see Daniil Hunter get better block shedding and hit power. Each archetype goes hand in hand with your scheme, so you can specifically make your player fit the scheme better, and eventually you can make it so they are the player that gets that puzzle piece boost in training. So for Stefon Diggs, we saw 5 different ratings go up, and it's randomized every time you do it. Also, I found out at that menu, it doesn't tell you if a player is clutch or not. I thought they excluded that from Diggs for a moment until I got over to the edit player menu to see that it was clutch already. So I wanted to jump into a game here to show you a few things quick that are different in-game for Franchise. They're not really major features. It's not like Franchise was overhauled this year. There is a lot more new stuff to look at compared to Madden 18. But overall, I think there is still a long way to go, and even some of the new features like the coaching schemes, I think that's still just step 1. I think that it's a good first step, but the next one needs to be adding in some coaching staffs. Give us an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator as well. Let them contribute to our scheme, let them affect player ratings like we see in NCAA 14, in a system that I think was pretty popular among fans of that game. The biggest differences this year control how your players get better, and it's also going to affect a little bit around how you structure the moves you make to build your team. You want to fit your scheme and you want to get those boosts, and they seem to be really significant if you stay true to your scheme. Here is a little scene of Dalvin Cook actually getting hurt on the first play. And we have this familiar camera cut that kind of pans away and then fades out, but you'll see that player being helped to the locker room then alongside the trainers. I'm not sure if there are different kinds of scenes. This just seemed like a fitting scene for the injury that he did sustain. We have Kirk Cousins taking off here on the next play, and it still gives you a notification pretty much right away if a player is hurt. It was a dislocated ankle, although we saw Dalvin grab at his knee instead. I would prefer if they took a little more time to tell you if a player was coming back, especially if it was a more serious injury. Maybe tell us right away if it's something minor, but that is definitely not a minor injury. Now, you can of course play through normally, or you can do the system they introduced not long ago where you can play the moments and just focus on the key moments during a game, or you can play in slow sim, which lets you watch the CPU versus CPU play, and we end up getting the football back here. There is a new feature in instant replay where you can take snapshots, so you can take 5 from any game, and you see me take one right there. These snapshots are then used to add to those scenes that you see in the background of the franchise menu. So that's another small feature that was added this year. And here's just a cool catch. I just wanted to throw that in because I was impressed the catch was even made. There are a lot of new animations this year. I'll have some more gameplay thoughts once I can play more games. I spent a lot of time today going through franchise menus and putting together this video. And you normally would get the chance to celebrate right there, but I think that it was interrupted by Kirk Cousins breaking a milestone, so I couldn't actually do a celebration to show you. There is a new change with halftime this year. I'm not sure how good the commentary is for it because I play with commentary turned off, but there is an actual halftime report that basically shows you the map. And then you zoom in here to various games to see stats. Very similar to the studio update feature that was in NCAA, but obviously the graphics are a lot nicer here. So that's pretty cool. Would be nice if there was something more than just raw numbers. Maybe a picture of a player or something like that. And we end up losing the game. They show us sadly walking into the tunnel. Kirk Cousins hesitates for a moment, kind of looks back. He'll go on his way. After the game is over, we see the XP that we earn as our coach, and also we see players that we can now upgrade because they gained enough XP to earn a skill point. I'm personally a fan of the direction here with the new upgrade system, because I thought that it was a little unfair in the past to simply take a player and put all your points into a couple ratings that you wanted to focus on. In this case, you do have to rely a little bit on RNG. And I also noticed that it upgraded Barr's speed, and that's normally something incredibly difficult and near impossible to upgrade for a player. They don't usually get a lot stronger or faster or better acceleration. I will need to do some testing and see if over time we'll see players get a lot of speed boosts, or just boost to a rating they probably shouldn't be receiving there. Here in the gallery, we can see the images that we have saved. I didn't actually see any of these be put on the TV in the background here in Zimmer's scene. I do think that is possible because we have seen it in the deep dive article they posted a couple months ago. They do show the images, however, in league news. So I'm sure if you were in like an online CFM and players were taking snapshots, that would be really cool to see. The upgrading I did to Anthony Barr made it so his zone coverage archetype was his best, and that allowed him to start getting those boosts every week from weekly training. So that's the value of that. He got over 400 XP, and the XP bar is actually up a pretty significant rate after just one session. In week 3, a couple new options become available, including negotiating new contracts. This all is the same, and I think that we are well overdue for a new contract system. One that lets us do front-loaded contracts, the back-loaded contracts, or something more balanced. I just want more options for how we do deals with players. And I also want to handle guarantees differently because it's not just signing bonuses that can be guaranteed. One thing to keep in mind, that signing bonus is actually whatever it says multiplied by the number of years. So keep an eye on that when you are negotiating deals with certain players. Those signing bonuses can get out of hand if you're not careful. Diggs ends up rejecting my offer, sadly. In week 3, you can begin scouting next year's draft class, and this year one of the big features is the ability to make a custom draft class. You can also import them from Madden Share. Scouting is still the same. You use 15 points to unlock their top rating to see what they're best at, and then their second rating is 10 points, their third is 5, unless you have a scout that focuses on that position and therefore makes it cheaper. The scouting is the same as it has been, but you will see players that specifically will fit your scheme, which is nice. Editing your draft class will be a big thing for a lot of players this year, and the way you do it is by editing your existing class. You don't just make players and add them to a class. You take a player you want to adjust, and you can do whatever you want. But you do also get this big peek behind the curtain to see what these players' ratings are going to be. So I wish there was a system that allowed you to make prospects without having to go through and see all this stuff that you might want to keep hidden from yourself. They definitely need to make it possible sometime in the future to make players and just add them to a class without seeing everything else. You are able to edit everything you want for these players, but just realize how this system works. I also believe you can edit your class at any time before the draft. And when a change is made, this is especially important for online franchises, but you're able to see when changes were made to the class, when those files were accessed. You can find all that in the transaction log. Also, make sure you are using your scouting points every week, because the points you do not use are halved, and that's it. You don't get those points back. When players are hurt, they have a chance to come back early through this big decision screen. You can play a player through their injury, which there is a risk and reward, and I've always thought in the past that the risk far outweighed the reward. I'll see how it is for different positions. That one I didn't like for Murray because it lowers his strength, which is an important skill for him. It also dropped his injury rating to a 68. You can find new players to sign through this menu as well, or go to the free agent pool. I wanted to go get a running back to add to this team because both Cook and Murray were injured, so I tried out the trading this year, and it's definitely been updated. I'll need to try this out more later on, but I tried to trade for Charkandrick West, and they were not giving him up. Not even for a first round pick was I able to get the second running back on their depth chart. So they've definitely increased the way players are valued. But also, I saw the CPU make some trades that I questioned, so I'm not sure how the logic all works because every team seems to have a different valuation of a player. Through the league news, I've also seen a lot of players getting benched. That's a feature that's been in the game, but it surely seems to be happening quite often in Madden 19. Right there you saw the story of the top quarterback in this draft class, and the weird thing from this year was we only ever got one draft story. I'm not sure if they've changed something with that, but usually you get a bunch throughout the season, and we only had one. Now at the end of the year we did not make the playoffs, so our practice squad players were all signed, and I didn't do training every week either, so this isn't really the true rate of skill point earning, because the training every week is really vital to upgrade your XP, and I just skipped over that and simulated too much. One thing to keep in mind for this new archetype system: some ratings go into multiple archetypes. Watch what happens here with Kirk Cousins. I tried to make his West Coast archetype his best. His field general was an 82, I made his West Coast an 82. However, it also upgraded his field general because there was a rating that affected it, so I still have some work to do to make his West Coast his best trait. When you upgrade those archetypes, by the way, it increases their overall rating by 1, and it takes in account how many ratings need to increase for that overall rating to advance one stage. So it's randomized with a pool of different attributes that are relevant to that spot. Here are the end of the season awards, and I'd really like them to go and make the Offensive Rookie of the Year and the Defensive Rookie of the Year awards just universal, because there is no AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. In the NFL, you get one Offensive Rookie of the Year and one Defensive. I'm not sure why it's split up in Madden and has been for years. Here are some of these stats, and simulated stats were a focus of mine going into here, and there's definitely some work to do, and I'll show you why. I wanted to see Lamar Jackson's numbers after he won Rookie of the Year. He had 18 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions, and for rushing, only 2 rushes. So quarterbacks just basically aren't running in the sim engine. The other one here is running back, and in Madden 18 there were just too many short carries, and you'd see running backs get these really bad averages, and the averages seem better in here. They were at least on par with what these players have done in the past, so that was good, but they're still not getting averages the right way. There are very few long runs in the simulating, and I'll show you something that proves that. Lamar Miller carried the football 264 times. None of those runs were longer than 9 yards. I'd say that has less than a 1% of 1% chance of happening in the real NFL for a player with Lamar Miller's skill set. No runs over 9 yards the entire year. Then in the receiving game, if you sort by yards, what do these players all have in common? Those are pretty much all slot receivers. Where are the outside receivers that can put up the 1,500 yard numbers like Julio Jones? That really confused me. So, overall, there is a long way for franchise mode still to go. Yes, there are some improvements this year, but the game needs to get better, faster. The changes this year were nice, but we got almost nothing new in Madden 18 besides sorting the draft board. I like some of the additions this year with the coaching schemes and the way you upgrade players, but I feel like a lot more has to happen. The sim engine clearly is not good enough. We need rework contract systems. I want to play the Pro Bowl. I'm wondering why so many low-rated players made the Pro Bowl in the first place. That was confusing. Trade logic, I'm not sure where that's at right now because of this Nick Kwiatkowski trade that was made. I'm not sure how the Steelers valued him to be worth a 2, 5, and a 7. I think they were right in valuing him as a player to go get, but that's way too much to give up. Overall, right now, what I've seen from franchise mode makes me think it's a slightly improved version from Madden 18, and sadly I'd like to see some larger strides for the mode, and we haven't seen large strides in a long time. I will be going through a full off-season, and I'll share that with you in my next video. We'll see if that is any different and what I think about the off-seasons this time around. That's a very important part for a lot of us that enjoy franchise. Thank you all for watching today's video. Please smash that like button if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel. I will see you all again soon. Have a great day.